Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be talking about the fantastic film Skincare. I'm joined today by director and co-writer Austin Peters and actor Luis Gerardo Méndez. And Austin, starting with you, I love that even just from the very first opening of the film, where we have that series of shots on Elizabeth Banks, that we are presented with this idea of every character in the film has who they are on the inside and who they are trying to project themselves to the world as. And it's really an ethos that we see through every single character in different ways throughout the film. And so I was interested in the script writing process and the filmmaking process in capturing these two different dichotomies of every character.
Yeah, I think that was something that the cast really brought to it. It's something that we thought a lot about when we were writing, is that all these characters should have a public life and personal life and a secret life, you know? And so I think that we make sure that we have chances to see all of them throughout the movie in their sort of private moments when they think no one else is around. And I think that that's probably when we get to know them the most deeply, because every character in this movie is projecting something to everyone at all times.
And Luis, in talking about your character a little bit, he works in the skincare industry and he describes the fact that he's working with NASA technology and using anti-gravity chambers. And so he's clearly quite an out of the box and forward thinker. And I was just curious about how you found the inroads with the script of really figuring out who he is and what is the journey that's taken him to this point with his backstory.
Well, when I read the script, I found that very funny, like, because I asked Austin, like, what is this? What are these chambers of that came from the NASA? And we decided that it didn't matter, like it's just like talking about something that tells you that there's always gonna be something newer and better than the thing you're working with. Like we're seeing that thing right now with AI. Like I'll see all my colleagues in the industry like freaking out about this new technology. So in a way, I think the movie is also about that, about these waves that are always coming, and how do you stay relevant, and how do you stay relevant in an industry like the beauty industry or the Hollywood industry, especially in a place like LA. Like LA is a very demanding city in terms of staying relevant and having the newest technology and the newest everything. So that was something that got me into the story really fast. Um, and I think there was also another layer of, like Angel, in a way, we never say exactly where is he from, but he's obviously from somewhere else. He's like, in my mind, he's Mexican like me. So I also like that. I really like that underlying lecture of the not so very welcome guy in the neighborhood. Like, okay, so there's this new guy coming from Mexico with this new technology. We don't like the guy. So I really try to work with that and to exorcise some demons in that sense.
And it's such a great point about the idea of trying to gain and try to keep relevancy in any industry. And off the back of that, Austin, I wanted to ask you about how you kind of explored that sort of trajectory, particularly with Hope, with Elizabeth's character, because it is something where you can see that she's had a decent amount of success in her career to have built this place and kept it running for 15 years. But now that she's trying to grow and escalate it, everything is kind of tightening in on her a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that, like Luis said, that we can all relate to. I always feel like, no matter how successful you get, you always feel like there's another generation coming up behind you that's gonna just totally replace you and make you irrelevant, and or that you're not gonna be able to keep up with whatever changes we can't predict happening in the future. And so I thought that was something that Elizabeth and I always talked about, is just this idea that this person is incredible at what they do and has been doing it forever and has built a life for themselves, but maybe that's not enough. But maybe that's not enough to feel secure anymore. And that's kind of, I think, what we were tapping into.
Yeah. And it's such a great exchange when Angel and Hope meet each other for the first time. And so I wanted to ask you both about kind of putting a scene like that together, because you can tell that they're both very used to kind of being a big shot and kind of taking the lead in any conversation or moment. And so you have the two of them in a very passive aggressive exchange. Like when she says, I don't think we have the same clientele. And he's like, you're right, we don't. And they both think that they're right. And so I was interested in how the two of you both kind of used that moment and worked with Elizabeth to create this really fun undercurrent of a power play.
I mean, Austin will tell you what he thinks, but for me, it was so easy. You know, like I worked with Elizabeth before. She directed me in Charlie's Angels, and we worked together on set as well. And we became good friends. And it's really easy to say those horrible things to an actor that you like. You know, when you have that professional intimacy on set, it's so easy and so fun because, you know, again, this is a professional, intimate space, and we're just having fun. So we can be like really aggressive with the other. And you know, we've been around for a long time in this industry, so we heard these things and we've seen these people trying to mark territory and to say like, "Hey, stay away from this place." Like, fuck off, you know. So like I really like that scene because in a way it's like for me it's like the starting moment of the movie when this is gonna be a problem, no?
Yeah, I think that, like Luis said, it's just he and Elizabeth have such a great relationship. And so it was so easy. We shot this movie in so few days, and everyone's schedule was so complicated, sort of getting them all lined up so we could all be in Hollywood to shoot this together. That shorthand that they had was amazing because Elizabeth as Hope is obviously a little bit of a bulldozer, and she comes in and she wants to control the situation, and that's the character. And Luis was just so ready for that, and was not thrown off at all, no matter how intense she was. And they're both so incredible at improvising. So I have so many hours of that scene that are so funny and that are so mean, and that just it goes off the rails so many times. And it was really fun in the edit and fulfilling because there was just so many options of what we could do, and they were all sort of crazy and amazing.
And
I love
there was also something funny, sorry, Mara, that I didn't know why, but I told Austin like a month before start shooting, like, I think I want to go blonde for this. And he was like, "Oh, that's great. Why?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I just feel it." And then the first day on set, of course, Elizabeth is super blonde. So when we saw each other, it was like, "Oh, yes, this is perfect." You know, because we have like the same color of hair, but this character is Mexican and he might be gay. So he's in these two minorities that is gonna put this character in way more problems, you know. Like, of course, this movie is set like a decade ago when we were not that woke as we are now, you know, but it started to grow. So I think that that was also very interesting to play with.
I love those sorts of details. And Austin, you were bringing up before that obviously for Hope, she's really used to controlling the situation. And it feels like so much of what happens to her is being someone who's used to controlling every situation as her life just falls into disarray in every single corner, one at a time, more and more. And so what was the fun in really kind of playing with the script and playing with the pages and just looking at all the different pressure points that you could apply to her at different points and how she was going to respond to them?
I think when we went through the script the first time, we sort of made it was about this character, obviously, that is so obsessed with control and everything that she does, and from the way she looks to the interactions she has with everyone, even when she's pretending to not be in control, she is in control. And then, sort of through the script, we marked all these moments where there was like a crack in the glass and a crack in the armor, and slowly, and that was sort of really about calibrating the whole film to watch her sort of spiral out. And from the first meeting with Elizabeth, she said, you know, it's so fun to watch someone lose their mind, and that's what this movie is really going to be about. And so that's really what we were going for, and that's the kind of inspirations that we were looking at.
I also love the choices that you make with music throughout as the tension mounts for her. You know, it's like earlier on there's a more kind of like string instruments and things that sound a lot lighter, and then like the use of instruments and the tone just completely changes. And so how did you work with your composer to figure out what were the different sounds and different instruments that you wanted to bring in at different points?
Well, I worked with Fatima Al-Qadiri to do the score, and she is a genius. And I was a huge fan of her from a film called Atlantics, which came out in 2019. And I remember watching it in 2019 and thinking, and it was all set in Senegal, and I loved the music. And I remember thinking this might be interesting for skincare. So I was so excited to get to work with her on this. And she had a really strong, strong opinion of starting with the harp and having the harp sort of be the voice of hope. And then as it goes on, and the movie sort of inverts, it sort of starts to take on the aesthetic of all these sort of um, almost like club music, like sort of underground, very dark rave music. And sort of like as she sort of descends into her own inferno, the music sort of follows her there. And the music also sort of is the soundtrack of her mind. You know, it's showing us what she won't show to the audience and she won't show to the people around her. So we always called it her mind harp that sort of goes off when she meets Angel for the first time and when the insult lands on her.
And Luis, obviously, one of my favorite scenes with you is when we get to see how Angel is when he is at home by himself, and the fact that he just creates a party zone and karaoke party for one. And so, when you were going into the musical number for him and singing The Cure, how did you set about thinking how would he play this? How would he sing this? You know, how good is he going to be, or how out of tune is he going to be when it's just him and he's not even performing for an audience?
Yeah, that was a very interesting scene. That was actually the scene that made me be like, okay, I want to do this movie. In the first script, it was another song. It was George Michael, "Careless Whisper," which is one of my favorite songs. So I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity to do this song in front of a camera. And the whole idea that we had was to show this guy who's in the skincare industry, you know, and he's a rock star in that industry, but that's not the thing he loved the most. You know, like he was like a dancer, you know, or he was like a singer. He wanted to be a singer or a dancer in with pop stars and stuff, and he toured the world, you know, like with this kind of world. And he ended up being and working in this industry because he got an injured, you know, he's injured and he cannot dance anymore. Of course, all these things are not in the movie, but you see the idea was to feel that when you see this guy performing in his house, you know, like trying to have a little bit of that again in his living room by himself. And you can see that this guy is somehow broken, you know, and that was very important for us because that's very LA, you know, like you think like everyone is super successful and everyone is super happy. And you think that when someone is successful, he should be happy. And that couldn't be more false, you know, like the more successful you are, the more money you have, the more recognition you have, the more tricky your mental health becomes that it's harder to be in your center, to be yeah, to be okay with your minds. So I think that was something very interesting about the script, and something I for me was important to say, you know, like, yeah, all these things you're seeing about this character looks very nice, but he might not be that okay.
Yeah, it
I
also
love
felt like, sorry, I just wanted to jump in because I love that scene. And every time I watch it last night and when I get to see Luis sing that song, it is like one of my absolute favorite parts in the movie because you can feel so much sadness in him and he's so strong to facing the outside world. And this is this moment where you get to see inside of him. And I think Luis did so much with that song and with that moment that you really get to feel connected to that character in a totally new way. And so that was such a joy getting to shoot that and getting to have that in the film.
Yeah, it's a wonderful scene, and I love what you were describing there, Luis, in terms of his backstory and kind of the previous career that he had beforehand. Did you think of him as someone who's just always been a very high achiever with a real level of perfectionism about him? Because there's even that moment when he's doing an interview for television and he's saying, "There's no one else in the industry who could even compete with what I'm doing," and you kind of get the sense that that's always been part of his core.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't know, the take that I had on this character was that there's always going to be someone more talented than you know. So for me, the way to play this song, at the time we were shooting this movie, I was preparing a musical I was producing in Mexico City, what I needed to sing really well, you know, like, because it's a musical. So I talked to Austin, like, I think this guy should just sing like any of us in a karaoke, like he wanted to be a part of that industry, but he wasn't that talented. So that's the reason he ended up in this other industry, but he's still very competitive. So yeah, all those micro decisions of, like how talented is this character, like I think those are the things that make them more relatable, because we are all in this struggle all the time, like, are we enough? Are we enough? That's the question we're all asking ourselves all over and over. So I think that's what the movie is about, about mental health, about how much are you willing to do to get what you want, and yeah, that is never enough, sadly.
Austin, I also really like, in terms of the filmmaking style, the way that there's a real observational quality to it. And it comes from the facet of we get to see other characters watching each other, because they're all kind of driving by each other's houses, looking in through windows. And sometimes we know who's watching, sometimes we don't. And so I was just interested in how you really shaped that feel, because it kind of really brings the audience into the story in an interesting way.
Yeah, I think that we really talked about the point of view of the movie and where you wanted to be throughout. And we decided that we were going to have this shift right around the scene that we're talking about, where you're in sort of her head the whole time, and then the movie sort of inverts and it goes to the classic sort of noir Eye of God perspective, where you can see everybody in their own world. And suddenly it shifts and becomes something very different in terms of what everyone is doing and what different things mean. Where up until this point, we've really just been in Hope's experience. And then when she goes on that drive, we suddenly start to get away from the car, and then we can go in with Angel, and we can go in with Jordan, and we can go see these sort of different people and sort of feel their loneliness and how they're all sort of spinning around and are about to collide in the way that they do. So that was always planned from the script, really, that was going to be the moment. There was going to be this sort of like musical interlude almost that sort of like transformed the movie and turned it inside out.
Absolutely. And Luis, there's a moment where Hope starts to realize that her clients are leaving her, and they're coming across the parking lot to your character's place, and she even kind of like comes in the middle of the business day and starts screaming at him. How did you feel like that changed things for him, or did you feel like it didn't? It was like, you're in here shouting at me because I'm actually becoming more successful than you in a short space of time that I've existed next door.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just like, um, I think I've seen people lose their mind, like in this industry and in life in general, and it's always hard to see that, no? But and I think this character, I think Angel, he's trying to be very nice with her. Uh, Something that Austin did very well when he was directing us. He was like poker face, poker face all the time. Like we don't need to know what's going on. Like we need to believe that this guy is guilty, or that she's just crazy, and she's losing her mind. So it was interesting to adjust all those scenes to give Austin what he needed for the audience to believe what he wants. It's very tricky when you're doing a thriller like this. It's not like you're an actor making decisions like, I feel like my character should do this because I feel this way. No, you're part of this very complex mechanism that is going to make the audience believe these kind of things. So it has to be very precise, and that's what I love this kind of movie so much, because there's so many things happening to make the audience uh, feel for this.
Yeah, it's a wonderful film with so many intricate details that go into the storyline, and I really loved it. So congratulations to both of you, and thank you so much for talking about it today.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. It was great.